Good morning. My name is Chris Fox, and today we are talking about dopamine, and more specifically, where you get it. If you are failing to be productive in your life, then this is probably the reason why. And I've done a lot of work in the last couple of weeks looking at this. As you guys know, I'm big on optimizing my life. I'm big on, trying to understand the neuroscience of how we work with habits because I want to, get the most efficiency out of myself that I can. If you're at a point where you don't feel efficient and you want to, here's what I would recommend doing. Take a good look at your life and go through and try to figure out where your dopamine is coming from. So to give you an example, when I was a little kid, the dopamine would come from, oh, as soon as the bell rings and I get to go to lunch, I can sit down and read a book for 20 minutes. Reading a book was the reward. That's where I got the hit of dopamine. It only happened when I finally reached it, sat down, and was able to read the book. You can get dopamine from all sorts of things in your life. You can stop by Starbucks and get a cup of coffee, and that can give you a rush of dopamine. But the problem in our current society is that dopamine is very easily available at all times. There's never a point where dopamine's not available. And that becomes an issue when you want to accomplish big things because your brain is a very simple calculator. It's looking at the effort involved versus the payoff, the reward. And it's always going to do the easiest path. So if I can get dopamine from logging on to World of Warcraft or Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or TikTok or any of those other options, then it's way easier for me to get dopamine from doing those activities. So I'm not going to write. I'm not going to sit down and crank out a novel because cranking out a novel is hard. And I might get social validation if I finish a book. But instead of that, I can just get on social media and put up a post of me writing a chapter and get that same validation. So why put in the effort of actually doing the work? So what we have to do is figure out where we get our dopamine. What am I doing, almost unconsciously on a regular basis? Like, am I taking my phone out and checking a certain app? Am I sitting down at my computer? Am I watching TV? Where are you getting these dopamine rushes from? That little red badge on Facebook, is that the culprit? And once you understand, okay, these are the things that I'm doing, and these are the places that I'm going to acquire my dopamine, and we all need it as humans. It's very part and parcel to our motivation system, like the way our brain works. So if you figure out that you're getting your dopamine from bad places, this is the hard part because you have to stop making those places available. If you are playing a video game, Baldur's Gate, World of Warcraft, Fortnite, whatever is popular or whatever you like, and that's where you get your dopamine rush from. Maybe it's just sitting there and browsing Netflix. Like you can spend 2 hours never actually watching a movie, but just going through and looking at the thumbnails and the dopamine of maybe I'll discover something fun to watch. That can give you a dopamine rush. Well, all you have to do is figure out better ways to get your dopamine because your brain needs dopamine and it's going to do whatever it takes to get it. So if you limit it to only positive activities, all of a sudden you start getting things done. You start actually accomplishing things because you still crave that social validation. But now instead of logging onto Facebook, because you've blocked out social media, you've got to finish the chapters and get the work done. So the next time you do post on Facebook, you're saying something like, I finished the book, it's the end. And this is tricky to do. It's tricky to implement in our lives. But awareness is all it takes. So just be consciously aware of the areas in your life where you are getting your dopamine. What do you do? And for most of us, our smartphone is going to be the largest culprit. So one of the first things that I changed is I don't carry my smartphone with me. I leave it in the bedroom on the charger most of the time. I work from home. Sometimes I'll bring it out. I think it's probably here somewhere. I've actually got it in my pocket right now because I was just on the phone. I just took a phone call and was speaking to a person, so I needed my phone. But in general, I don't use my phone as a smartphone anymore, and I almost never take it in the bathroom, which forces me to sit there and think as I do my business, as we used to do, in a different age of the world before smartphones were a thing, unless your host was kind enough to put a magazine in the bathroom. I think reclaiming your life can be done and you can become just vastly more productive. But getting there requires you to identify the habits in your life that satisfy that dopamine urge and then curbing them in a direction that's got you towards productivity. So gamifying your productivity, I find, helps a lot. I have checklists. I love checking things off lists. So when I clean something or finish a task, that's a rush of dopamine for me. I know I'll get to check it off a list. And that's a positive source of it. And so, of course, that gets to stay. But if you are waking up in the morning and immediately going to something unhealthy, some bad habit that is rewarding your dopamine cravings, how can you unplug that habit? How can you modify it in such a way that it's replaced with something positive? And if you can install something there that has you being productive and then being rewarded for it, in 12 months, your life's going to look completely different. I really recommend making that change if you can. So I'd love to hear from you in the comments, what bad habits you have, what you think might be replaced. If anything like this has worked for you in the past. I myself have done it a number of times over the years, and I'm about to do it again, this sort of self-analysis. But let's talk about it in the comments. Anyway, guys, I do need to get back to the writing. I am knee-deep into book 2 in the Shattered Gods series. Book 1 is doing astoundingly well. I love being a fantasy author. Anyway, I'm going to get back to the writing, guys, and I'll see you next week.